After the unusual death of mob boss George Murphy on the night of New Year's, Officer Ethan Graham begins to investigate the mysterious case. Police find a knife at the crime scene, on which they uncover the fingerprints of Andre Murphy, George Murphy's nephew. Meanwhile, Marilyn Murphy demands justice for her husband, while his mistress, Penelope Jameson, is in delight. Do you want revenge for what happened to your uncle? For what happened to you? You know who is behind this? After Andre Murphy was convicted and sent to jail, the police arranged to transport him to the main prison. Andre watched the two officers as he sat handcuffed in the van. He anxiously slipped out a pin he had kept hidden and picked the cuffs, counting under his breath. 8, 9, 10. Right as the clock hit midnight, there was a sudden explosion as the van took a jolting shake, flipping over somewhere along the route passing through the woods. In that devastating situation, Andre slipped out of his cuffs, took one of the rifles, and escaped out into the woods. North. Following the route, he soon reached the riverside, where he spotted him, Officer Ethan Graham. The plan worked. Things were not as they seemed, and without Andre, it wasn't possible to get to the bottom of this case. So Officer Graham set up this accident to break Andre out of jail. That night, when he visited him, he had given Andre a pen, his way out. 2 officers will be transporting you to the main prison. They'll be following this route. There will be an explosion at exactly 12. Keep an eye on the officer's watch, and uncuff yourself with the spring before that. When the explosion takes place, take the assault rifle from the officer and escape from there. But do not harm the officers in any way. Follow the map and meet me by the riverside. And just as he said, Officer Graham was here. He handed Andre some clothes and money. But taking it, Andre was in doubt. But why? Why are you helping me? We all have our reasons. What next? Panama. You'll find her there, and no one should know about this. With the money and passport, Officer Graham arranged for Andre. He immediately fled the country and took a ferry to Panama. And it was soon Andre found the person he was looking for. Penelope. After Andre was sentenced to life, Penelope met with the bearded man. He gave her money, and she escaped to Panama to begin a new life in hiding. She thought no one would know, and no one would find her here. but for the past few days, she had been getting a feeling she was being followed. Who was he? And it was one night. What she feared happened. What do you want? Money? Take it. But the man took off his hoodie and looked her right in the eyes. Penelope was shocked seeing Andre. You? What did you think? You would escape? You thought I would never get my hands on you? All this time you were resisting me, and that Christmas Eve you offered yourself. Why? You stole that knife. You took my car. You thought you could frame me? Make me rot in jail and get away with it? Penelope knew she was caught. She was finished. She immediately made a run for it. But she couldn't outrun, nor could she fight off Andre. That night, Andre brought Penelope far out to the abandoned lighthouse and did what he had to make her talk. A Barbie like you couldn't have done all this by yourself. Tell me who's behind this. I don't know who he is. Listen, girl. You can leave here tonight with your life, or I can. You can leave here tonight with your life, or I can. Speak up. Who is he? Stop. I'm telling you the truth. I don't know. Penelope realized unless she cooperated, Andre wouldn't stop, and she had reached her breaking point. So she spilled everything. He was a bearded man. I don't know who he is, but it was him who has been contacting me. All I have is a number. Call him and tell him to come here. 1 million, and I'll let you go. Throwing the phone at Penelope, Andre watched as she trembled to dial the number. Penelope begged for her life over the phone, and fortunately, the bearded man agreed to the terms. I'll be there tomorrow night. It was a long wait, but sharp at midnight the following day, Andre noticed the man walking down the shore, approaching the old lighthouse. Here's the money. Hand her over. Andre opened the bag. There was in fact 1 million. But he chuckled and kicked it aside. Not so easy. You took the life of my uncle. You put me in jail. You thought you could repay me with money? Andre took out his knife and immediately charged at the man, but it was right then. The man took out a gun. Don't try to be over smart, Andre. Andre froze on the spot as the man approached him, ushering Penelope aside. But it was just then they all heard footsteps behind them. Everyone turned to see Officer Graham as Andre smirked. Perfect timing. Wow, Mrs. Murphy, you are too good, Officer Graham said as he clapped his hands. But even Andre didn't expect what he just heard. Marilyn? Realizing her identity was blown, Marilyn took off her disguise. Yes, me. It was almost 16 years ago. Marilyn was trying to build her career as an actress and model in the city when she first met George Murphy. Not only did George have the power and connections, but he truly loved her. And Marilyn fell in love with him. But it was after her marriage she realized what she had trapped herself into. George fulfilled her every wish, showering her with gifts. But at the same time, he intentionally sabotaged any chance of her having a career and kept her just for himself. George never let her grow in life, never let her be anything of her own. All he wanted was to own her. And what made this marriage worse was the fact that George was unfaithful, and she couldn't conceive. Marilyn soon found out the kinds of things George was involved in. And as the years went by, and George lost interest in her, she couldn't take it. She wanted revenge for ruining her life, her ambition, her career. So she used her talents and her skills and disguised herself as the bearded man and began to play her part. She visited Penelope, manipulated her to do the dirty work for her. And Penelope followed everything according to plan. And finally, on New Year's night, when Marilyn met Mr. Murphy, Mr. Murphy did recognize her, as he knew about her talents. But he never expected her to betray him like this. Your game is over. Marilyn immediately pulled her gun on Officer Graham. But before she could pull the trigger, Andre pushed her out of the way, throwing the gun down. But then, a shot fired in the air, hitting Andre. Marilyn and Penelope stared at his body laying lifeless on the ground. Officer Graham had fired the bullet. Who are you? Many people thought George Murphy was sterile. In 16 years of his marriage, he didn't have any children. But the truth was, George Murphy never took any children with anyone because Marilyn was unable to conceive. But before meeting Marilyn, there was a time when George used to meet a woman. Her name was Isabel Graham, but everyone knew her as Rosie. And Ethan was their love child. At the time, Mr. Murphy was involved in petty crimes and robbery. And he didn't have the money or the influence to rescue Isabel from her misery. And one day, he discovered a customer of hers had taken her life. Mr. Murphy was enraged. He hunted down the culprit, mob boss Hugo, and took his revenge. also his place in the syndicate. Mr. Murphy never revealed Ethan's identity to anyone. Not even his own brother, or even Andre, knew Ethan was his own cousin. But Mr. Murphy had deep regards for him, and he secretly provided for him and paid for his education. And it was under his support that Ethan reached where he is today, as an officer. It was the day Ethan joined the department. Mr. Murphy had given him a gift. This is the knife that took your mother's life. But although Ethan joined the police, Mr. Murphy never took advantage of his position. Mr. Murphy might have had his faults, but to Ethan, he was a good father. Marilyn couldn't believe what she was hearing. He had a son? You took the life of my father. As Ethan took out his gun, Marilyn froze. Please, don't do this to me. He loved you. He gave you everything. And you betrayed him. Your father was no man. He was a monster. All he did his whole life was take advantage of people. Why do you blame me when you know well what your father was? And you think I'm different from my father? Seeing Marilyn fall off the tower, Penelope was petrified. She stared at Ethan, wondering what was going to happen with her. What are we going to do now? Mrs. Murphy is missing. Andre is in hiding. The blade of Mr. Hugo?
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.